Good day, everyone. I'm Paula Hunter, and I will be kicking off our 16th online community meeting, or I should, our 16th community meeting, our 7th virtual meeting. I've lost track at this point, but I thank you all for joining us this week. Hopefully we will keep you captivated over the course of the 3 days. Got a lot of great sessions. Before I hand over the mic, so to speak, to Simeon, I just wanted to give a quick update on a few things. We're in the process of planning our 2022 goals for the Mojaloop Foundation. So hopefully some of you have been engaged on that, get your input on focus and priorities. That said, in talking with our board of directors, some of the key areas that we want to focus on in 2022 remain some things that have been important this year as well. First and foremost, adoption. Really, the only way we can achieve our mission of addressing financial inclusion is to see Mojaloop deployed live in the marketplace. So that continues to be an important priority. We also are going to increase our efforts on having relationships with the relevant philanthropies and other NGOs that provide funding for pilot projects and implementations. While the Mojaloop Foundation itself does not fund that type of effort, we do want to make sure that we can have good relationships in the marketplace to help people find sources of funds for those types of projects. A third area for us is to continue to grow our membership in our community. We obviously can't do this work alone. We depend on all of your input and support to grow the product and the feature set. And we rely on our members to oversee the governance and provide additional funding as well. And speaking of community, I'm going to hand it over to Simeon in a moment, but I wanted to take a quick second to thank those of you that filled out our first community survey. Simeon's reviewing the results of that survey as we closed it late last week. Some very good feedback. Appreciate the people that took the time to provide a lot of input on the questions, and hopefully we'll be sharing those details with you soon. So with that, I want to wish you all a good week or a good 3 days in our community meeting, and pass it on to Simeon.
Thank you so much, Paula, and welcome everybody. See a number of people joining us from all over the world, some in cold, chilly, rainy places, others in very hot areas. It's good to have this platform to connect. So just before I begin, I want to start off with a couple of minor housekeeping items. The first is we have formally returned to the meeting style Zoom sessions where you can mute and unmute yourself, both audio and video. And this will allow you to interact, ask questions. And we did this deliberately because we wanted this convening to be more of a discussion. Why do I say that? Because I believe decisions are progress, but it is usually discussions that lead to decisions and progress. And so we encourage every single one of you, at any point, if you do feel you have something to have an input on or make a comment on, please raise your hand. The speaker will acknowledge it and give you opportunity as the session progresses, or type it in the chat and we can continue to have that conversation. If you have any comments, please keep them short and sweet, with respecting the speaker's time, so that we're also able to move this along fairly quickly. Secondly, for those of you who are on Mojaloop Slack, we do have a Slack channel. The Mojaloop PI, what's it called? #PI-16-meeting. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any feedback, that would be the place to put it. Just in case you're on Slack, please join us there. One of the things I do recommend all of you do is at the end of every single day, we have an open discussion sessions. These are meant to be breakouts where we can go further, barcamp style breakouts, where we can take a deep dive into any of the themes or topics that have been discussed during the day. We will have one today at the end of the day and another at the end of day 2 tomorrow. So just those 2 days. If you have any themes or topics or sessions you'd like to propose, you can go into Slack. In the PI16 meeting channel, there is a simple poll where you can vote for existing topic discussions or add your own if you wish to host any. So please do take the chance. The link to the Slack channel is right there in the chat. Please do take some time to log in there and keep tabs as well. Lastly, minor housekeeping thing. I think overnight my time, Zoom launched a new update. So if you haven't already updated, and just to avoid any issues, please do consider updating your Zoom client so that we're all together and everything is nice and peachy. Excellent. I shall begin by sharing my screen. And if you could let me know if we can see that, that would be appreciated.
Looks great, Simeon.
Awesome, thank you. Right, so I'm just going to pull up my chat window and participants window here so I can see anyone who raises their hands or has any questions. This morning, I'd like to begin with a quick update on where we are with our community. There is a lot that has happened over the last 1 year, and a lot of it, I will give highlights between this session and there's a second session tomorrow focused on the Community Council, where a lot of this work has been going on. Today, I want to give a quick highlight and updates of where we are with our community as regards 3 specific things. Just give me 1 second. Those 3 things are as follows. The 2021 community survey, we have the results in. I do want to take this opportunity to share those with you while they're still fresh. 2, I want us to talk about the next year's community strategy. And then 3, focus on elections. It's been a year. It's just coming up to a year since we last held the community governance elections for the various community governance groups. Though that is coming up, I think in about a week's time. So this is the opportunity for us to share some information about what to expect and how you can engage. So let's start with the community survey. We put out this survey essentially to create a baseline on a couple of things. 1 is our governance, 2, the tools that we use, 3 is our community strategy, among other things. And the results of these provide a baseline on which we will begin to measure metrics on a quarterly and a yearly basis. The survey was open this month, we're still in October, between 7th October and the 20th. And the survey went out to a total of 1,237 people. Out of those people, 21 people responded. Thank you very much for your feedback. The key highlights that I want to go over here are as follows, that came out from the survey. We asked about the awareness, your awareness of the Mojaloop direction and strategy. And overwhelmingly, everyone who answered the survey was aware of the Mojaloop direction and strategy. I was personally not expecting this number, but this is very encouraging. And I thank you all for paying that much attention to what we're focused on and actively, and the role that you play in actively contributing to it. 88%, we asked about the Agile Scrum model that we use within the community. Those of you who are actively contributing in the development process of Mojaloop are aware we use a safe model, a safe subset of the Agile Scrum model. And where we break everything down into epics and sprints, put everything up on GitHub, and that's how we track our progress. 88% of the respondents said that this model is productive. For what it's worth, it is important for me to mention that we have had discussions with some of the members of the community as well as some staff about this model and seeing how we can make it better or if we can improve it, and questioning if it addresses our needs. This is still a conversation that is open, and we invite your thoughts because it will also go to inform the 2022 community strategy. On average, 6.6 out of 10. This is the average rating for people's level of fulfillment while engaging in the Mojaloop community. This is still good. My personal benchmark or target is 7 out of 10. So 6.6 is just shy of that. But we did get a good response of people feeling really good about participating in the Mojaloop community. And that's a bonus. And I think it reflects in some of the work and outputs that we get to hear from the rest of the community, which is great. 6.2 out of 10. This is the average rating for people finding that the Mojaloop documentation thorough and easy to understand. Again, we have set a target for 7 out of 10, so this is just shy by 0.8. It is also important for me to acknowledge that in the last few months, there has been a lot of work to improve the Mojaloop documentation. And we hope to launch a new version of the Mojaloop documentation tentatively by November the 24th. We have a team member, Udwak, who's been working on this, supported by others like Louis and Sam and Miguel. And we invite anyone who's interested in the documentation process to please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to plug you in into that conversation. To go one level deeper of what's happening, our documentation has primarily been hosted on GitBooks. We did make a decision to switch it to ViewPress, and you'll be hearing lots more details on that from Louis in a session tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. We asked about how easy it is to contribute to Mojaloop. 70% of respondents said they find it easy to contribute to Mojaloop. When we asked for some anecdotal statements around this question, there are some people who said, we've done this a while, so it's generally easy, or new people tend to find other community members who are already plugged into the process, and they provide lots of guidance. So I want to credit the community members for helping new folks find their way within the community. There has been, and one of the things that we have been working on for the past year or so is to try and make it easier and simpler for people to join. This last quarter, this culminated in a work stream, the community onboarding work stream, which not only focuses on the onboarding tools and processes, but also helping people figure out how they can find a place in the community. And we've seen some great activity and responses there. Some of you are very keen on the raw data, so I will highlight a few here for you. This is a scary chart, but I will break this down for you. The question we asked is to indicate the work streams you're involved by rating the effectiveness of each work stream. So we created a list of all the various work streams. And what's important is this column. Let me see if I can get my marker here. So I don't know if you can see the laser, but the very first column lists all the work streams that people are involved in. We weighted it on a scale of 1 to 10. And NA is anyone who perhaps may not have interacted with that work stream, so didn't have to vote for it. And the most important column that you should be looking at is the weighted average. That is a summary of everything you see in the middle. So focus on the first column and the last one. The top rated work stream is the business operations framework with 6.6. Again, please keep in mind that our target rating across all these metrics is 7 out of 10. For the business operations, we've got 6.6, that's the first one. ISO 20002, that was 6.5. FX, 5.8. Merchant scheme extensions, including QR support, that's 5.7, which ties with the community onboarding workstream. The documentation, 5.73. Bulk payments enhancements, 5.5. Core team, 5.1. 3 PPI, that's 5, which ties with community. Reference architecture, 4.67. Platform quality and security, 4.4. This is how you rated the effectiveness of all these work streams, and they come on a scale of out of 10. So work stream leads do notice. This has prompted a number of conversations and thoughts internally and thoughts in my own mind about addressing some of the effectiveness and process flows within the work streams. Up until now, we focused on the governance level, but I think it's worth spending some time with each of the work streams, not just talking about the work taking place in the work streams itself, but focusing on not just the work in the work streams itself, but focusing on the effectiveness of how things are being done, and if people feel included and actively are getting some sense of satisfaction and fulfillment by participating in those work streams. I'll move on to the next slide. These are other work streams. Some are repeated, so please ignore them. The design principles, interoperability. Actually, these did not get any votes. I thought I hit that slide, so I'll move on. Sorry for that. The next thing that we measured is the effectiveness of the community governance teams. And we listed them as follows. We have the community council. And again, the first column has the list of the community governance groups. And the last column gives the weighted average out of 10. So Community Council has 7.75. For those who may not know, the Community Council is the representative governing body of the Mojaloop community. Everyone in that team is voted by you, voted and chosen by you, and they serve a year's term. The Community Council has been serving for 1 year now. They exceed my personal target, which is 7. They have a 7.75. The Design Authority has 7.27. The Change Control Board, 7.08. And the Product Council, 6.63. This is how you rate the effectiveness of the various community governing bodies within the Mojaloop community. I'll move to the next slide if I can find my mouse. We also asked about the effectiveness of collaboration tools that are used by the community. Publicly, most of you will remember that the Community Council took an action to develop a simple tools policy where we said at workstream level, essentially the workstreams can figure out what tools they would like to use to collaborate. I'm talking about specific collaboration tools. This is different from development tools and other things. We've been focusing on tools that we use when we want to collaborate outside of our own individual work streams. We have 5. Slack, of course, rates the highest, 6.85. But we have received anecdotal comments where people say, let's get paid Slack to get the most out of it. There have been recommendations for using tools like Discord. And we'd like to hear more of your feedback on that so that we know how best to, what tools serve you best going forward. GitHub comes second, 6.62. TeamUp, which is the Mojaloop public calendar, where you can see all our meetings. If you have no idea how to access that, the link is mojaloop.io/calendar. On there, you're able to see all the weekly stand-ups, all the community governance meetings, TGB meetings, board meetings. Where the meetings are public, you can see all the information of how to join. Just that it's one way to make it easy for people to visibly and visually see what's happening across the entire community. Again, the link to check that is mojaloop.io/calendar. Discourse. Discourse is where we put most of our documentation, most of our minutes, especially those of the Community Council, the Design Authority, and the Change Control Board. If you go, previously we used to use it as well for feedback sessions for some of the sessions we had for community meetings. There is still some very valuable links in there to previous recordings of meetings, to minutes. We did this intentionally so that the community could visibly and easily see what was happening within the governance space. So I'd encourage you to take a look at Discourse. Discourse exists at community.mojaloop.io. Basecamp. We use Basecamp to track minutes, set agendas, mostly for the governance groups, everywhere from the board to the TGB to the Community Council and a few other groups. So Basecamp isn't a tool that a lot of people in our community have been open to, but those who participate who are actively involved in community governance are able to see this information. So that essentially summarizes the 2021 community survey. Again, the purpose of this survey is twofold. One, we wanted to create a benchmark, a baseline for metrics that we can track across a few verticals, some that I mentioned, including the tools that we use, the governance processes that we have, our community workflows, and other things. And we will keep track of this every quarter, but release results every year around this time, just before the community elections. So that is the first purpose. The second purpose of this survey is to get information from each and every one of you, the community members, on what you believe is valuable that can guide our strategy for 2022, specifically the Mojaloop community strategy, how we collaborate, how we work together, what we hope to do. And I do want to spend some time addressing that as a second issue, the 2022 community strategy. And I want to say right off the bat, the plan currently is to have an open dialogue, either one-on-one or within various groups, on what you think is important or what you feel should be the direction of the Mojaloop community for next year. Within classical community management, the idea is the leader of the community department focuses on what the community wants to achieve and helps them get there. And I still solidly believe in this principle. And one of the things in the past, I've taken the opportunity to pull people together and sort of try and listen to different conversations and ideas, and try putting in places measures and processes that will help people achieve those goals. This year, what I've done is I've been keenly listening to conversations that happen in various meetings across the community, and I've picked up on a few themes or topics that I think we need to figure out for our community. I have listed here 4 of them, and I'll go through them shortly, but this is in no way an exhaustive list. But I think these are some of the common themes that we seem to be having discussions on in our community. The first is the idea of funded development versus in the context of open source. The Mojaloop Foundation is an open source. The Mojaloop is an open source tool. The foundation itself does not earn any income or benefit financially from the product itself. So in the past, we've had many sponsors who have financially plowed who've put in money directly into teams or groups or individuals or companies to build certain aspects of the tool. And in the recent past, that funding has been reduced significantly in favor of open source development. And many have raised the concern around, for me to do X work, I have to be funded, or there's no resource for this. And so people generally, stuff just doesn't get done. And that in the recent past, especially this and last quarter, has raised some concerns within our community. And so we need to have, in the community survey, there are a number of you who put in some really good ideas that I think we can explore, including the idea of grants. One of the things that I'm open to is the idea of working with the community to find people who can provide grants to individuals or groups within our community to support certain tasks or the development of certain things. But we also need to figure out and really think about the open source mantra about contributing to the mission of financial inclusion, which Mojaloop was created to solve. So this is very, this topic keeps coming up in almost every other meeting I'm in. And I think it warrants a discussion for the community. If you have any thoughts, please feel free to set up a one-on-one meeting with myself or Megan or any of the foundation staff, or send me an email or find me on Slack. We'd be happy to have this conversation. So that's one topic or theme that I think warrants a conversation that will affect the 2022 community strategy. The second topic, as I just look at my time here, is the role and the relationship of product. One of the things I'm very, very proud of this community and of the Mojaloop Foundation as a whole is that we take pride in listening to the needs of our community. That's how I joined the Mojaloop Foundation, because it's the community members who said, no, we need a community manager. And shortly after that, the community said, no, we also need a product manager. And that's how myself and Leslie Ann got hired, among other things. We have experimented over the past year with the concept of the product council, which has addressed product specific needs within the community. But I've also been in certain meetings where there seems to be some confusion on the role and the relationship that product has with all the other spheres in our community. And some of you have raised this concern with me directly. Some of this I've also had within the community. This is something that I'd like us to have a very open conversation about and come as a community agree on what the role and relationship of product is within our community and figure that out. The other conversation that keeps cropping up, maybe not too frequently, but from time to time, is the idea of, is it time to move to version 2 of Mojaloop? And if it's so, what happens to version 1? And I've had so many ideas. The two that come up to mind right now is there has been floated a proposal that in case we, as a community, decide to focus on version 2, then the core team would essentially be responsible for managing version 1. But we've also had concerns from adopters about, if you guys move to version 2, then who will support us in maintaining and managing version 1? And there's arguments for and against, and I think it's a very healthy debate. I want to call this out to the forefront so that we all get on the same page about what to do. There are those there's an interesting idea that I heard last week on version 2. Version 2 in reference to, with respect to the reference architecture model. There's been an interesting idea where we elevate the bounded contexts from being under the reference architecture workstream. And those bounded contexts in and of themselves become work streams on themselves. And that helps us focus on developing version 2. Again, there are arguments for and against. And I think it's time for us as a community to bring this to the forefront and have a meaningful discussion and see where do we stand on these topics and make a decision. Again, as I noted at the beginning of our discussion, decisions equals progress. So the more we can identify certain themes or topics within our community, and the more we can have discussions and decisions on them, the faster we can continue to make progress towards the goals that we have set. The last topic I want to call out here is the question on incentive and recognition. There are many of you in our community in various ways who do a lot to build and develop the Mojaloop ecosystem, either by advocating for adoption of Mojaloop or by building tools that are complementary or work with Mojaloop or directly contributing to the development cycle and the development process. Many of you have spent sleepless nights, have had arguments in governance meetings, have invested a lot of yourselves, regardless of everything else that you may be going through in this crazy life of ours. Many of you have sacrificed a lot to contribute and build Mojaloop where it is today from the past, and you continue to do that and still remain committed to building Mojaloop to the goals that we have set for the future. I think it's time we have a discussion on how to recognize and appreciate that sacrifice. This is something Megan and I have discussed in the community department for some time right now, but I think it's important for me to bring all of you into this conversation and ask questions like, what is meaningful recognition to you? Who do you think, do you work with or do you collaborate with? Who do you think needs to be recognized for their contribution and their input to the Mojaloop ecosystem and the Mojaloop community? I think it's important that we begin to actively acknowledge these individuals and the sacrifice they make and share their stories far and wide, almost immortalize them for the work that they do. Incentive is also a thing. We had a question on this in the survey. Many of you have suggested interesting ways of incentivizing participation, development in the Mojaloop community. I will not go into the details of that here right now, but I do want to highlight this as a conversation that we need to have. So in summary, we have 4 topics that I've identified. This is not an exhaustive list. There may be other themes that you wish to bring up to light. This is just 4: funded development and the concept of open source, the role and relationship of product in our community, V1 and V2 of Mojaloop, incentive and recognition. And all these things are things that I'm hoping to plug into the 2022 community strategy. So here's my proposal. This evening at the end of today's session, that will be 4 to 4:30 p.m. UTC. I will host a breakout session in the open discussion session where I would like to hear from you some of the topics or themes we should be considering in light of the 2022 community strategy. Right. Let's go to the final agenda. The 2021 community governance elections. When I joined the foundation, one of the things that became very clear to me is that I wanted to have the community govern itself. It's one of the best practices in open source community governance across the board. And that meant organizing or sort of putting together, harmonizing our governance processes. That gave birth to, some of you may recall, the Community Leadership Council, which then morphed into what is now the Community Council, which is the representative governing body. The other groups that we have that existed before are the Design Authority, which focuses on architecture and technical issues from the community. And we have the Change Control Board, which governs APIs. The Change Control Board in the last year has morphed to be a bit more inclusive and is now made up of special interest groups. which essentially represents any API that's being developed or being worked on within the community. Once the Community Leadership Council held a process where we were able to restructure all the governance groups. And once that was done, it meant a good opportunity to hold elections. And so in November last year, we held the 2020 elections. 68 people registered to vote. I think this was out of 600 people, about 600 people at that time. Out of the 68 people last year, 54 people voted. There were 79 nominations for the Community Council, and the Community Council has 9 openings. And there were 19 nominations for the Design Authority, a position which, a group which only has 5 openings. These were the election statistics for last year. The elections for this year will be held again next month in November, a week from, I think 2 weeks from today. And I'll give you the timeline shortly. And this is the election slate. We'll be electing people in the 3 community governance groups. That is the Community Council. There'll be 9 positions. These are all 9 positions in the Community Council. There are no other positions in the Community Council. So all the 9 openings are all electable, and you may self-nominate or nominate somebody else to serve in the Community Council, the representative governing body of the community. The Design Authority is made up, the electable positions are 5 in total. The Design Authority is made up of a core team of 5 electable people. It is also made up of representatives from every relevant work stream. And that gets changed every single quarter as we go through different PIs and prioritize different work streams. And then secondly, last, the Design Authority has a representative from the technical governing body. So out of all those groups, the only electable position in the Design Authority are 5 people. This year, for the first time, we'll be holding elections for the Change Control Board in line with their charter. The Change Control Board has two new openings, one for the rapporteur that serves as the chair for the Change Control Board. This position is currently held by Michael Richards, and the convener. The convener position is currently held by Sam Kumari. So this is the election slate that you will be voting on for this year. 9 positions in the Community Council, 5 positions in the Design Authority, and the rapporteur and convener in the Change Control Board. So I do ask you all to spend some time reflecting and considering nominating yourself, self-nominating or nominating other people for these positions. There is a session tomorrow on governance where you will hear what the various governance teams have been working on in the past year. This will give you a better understanding of what to expect in those groups. So please stay tuned for that session tomorrow. With respect to the timeline, this is the timeline. The nomination period, register to vote period, starts on November the 8th, and this will only happen for 4 days. From November 8th to November 11th, we will send out an email to everybody, and we will ask you all to register to vote, and also consider at the same time, in the same form, nominate somebody or self-nominate for any of the positions. We'll be using a form similar to the one we used last year. So if you participated in last year's elections, nothing has changed. Not much has changed. So you should already be familiar with the process. We do, it's important for me to emphasize that you cannot participate in the elections unless you register to vote. We will send this email to 1,200 plus people to register to vote. When you see it, please do not ignore it. Please fill it out the minute you see it. It should take you a few seconds, a few minutes of your time to do. Please do consider prioritizing it and just getting it out of the way. Once we have a list of everyone who just registered to vote, those are the people that we will then be communicating with for the remainder of the election cycle. November the 12th, we will prepare the slate. What that means is we will check with those people who've been nominated to confirm whether they accept the nomination or not. And we will put everything into a nice system, an e-ballot tool. And on November 15th, the voting opens. And the voting will last, again, 4 days, November 15th to November 18th inclusive. And from November 19th to 22nd, we will take some time to confirm the results, and we will check with all the winners, all the elected officials, to see if they accept the nominations. And if they do, between November 23rd and November 24th, we will make a public announcement on the new groups and their leaders, the elected officials for each of the community governance groups. Last year, we introduced what's called Transition Week, where all the previous team and the new team met together, and there was a handover of any pending items and any of that stuff. We will still do that again this year. And only after Transition Week, December the 3rd, that is when the new community governance groups takes over. So for those of you guys who are still serving in any of the community governance groups, that's a community council, design authority, on the change control board, your tenure still goes on up until the end of Transition Week, which is December the 3rd, at which point the new group will take over. So that so if you've got any questions on that, please send me an email on any of the items presented today, which is the community survey results, the community strategy, and the community governance elections. I'd be happy to hear from you and get your feedback.